At the entrance to the Nur Shams refugee camp in the northern West Bank, groups of displaced Palestinians gather under the midday sun, calling for a right they say has been denied for nearly a year to return home. Israeli soldiers stand guard nearby, blocking entry to the camp as residents chant and raise banners demanding their reinstatement. The demonstration marks 10 months since thousands of residents were forced to leave the camp following a major Israeli military operation that began in the neighbouring city of Jenin. That operation, launched at the start of the fasting month of Ramadan, quickly expanded across the northern West Bank, including Tulkarem, where Nur Shams is located. And according to figures from the United Nations, at least 40,000 Palestinians were displaced during the campaign. Many have since lived in temporary shelters, rented apartments, or with relatives in other cities, waiting for permission to return. Israeli authorities described the 2025 operation as part of an intensified effort to dismantle what they called militant strongholds in the West Bank areas they said used to plan and launch attacks against Israeli targets. The Nur Shams and Jenin camps, both densely populated and historically restive, were among the most heavily affected. Military officials stated that the raids targeted armed groups associated with factions including Islamic Jihad and Hamas. Israeli spokespersons argued that the operations were necessary to prevent renewed attacks, citing a rise in cross-border shooting incidents earlier in the year. Palestinian residents and humanitarian groups, however, say the scale of destruction left behind was devastating. Dozens of homes were flattened, infrastructure was torn apart, and entire sections of the camp were rendered uninhabitable. Electricity and water supplies remain unreliable in the surrounding areas. Standing before the soldiers guarding the camp's entrance, residents of Nur Shams raised their voices in frustration. Among them was Ala Musa, who said she and her family had been ordered to leave during the holy month of Ramadan. We are taking part in this demonstration because on the first day of Ramadan, the Israeli soldiers ordered us to leave for 2 weeks until they conclude military operations. It's been 10 months and they still did not let us return. It's our right to return to our home, said Musa. Nearby, Lana Kazmos expressed anger and exhaustion after months of displacement. We want all the residents of Nur Shams to return to their homes. I want my family, my neighbours, my uncles, my relatives and loved ones to return to the camp. This is a right. We demand our rights. We are not asking for something that is not our right. We are demanding what the officials should be demanding. We see them silent. No one feels for us. We are the ones displaced from our homes, she said. For many like Kazmos, the demonstration is not just about returning, but about being seen, about reminding both Palestinian and Israeli authorities, as well as the international community, that their displacement continues. Another resident, Shireen Jaber, voiced her despair at the lack of support. There is no one standing with us or supporting us. We want to demonstrate daily with the hope that our families and people restore their normal life. With the hope that houses would be rebuilt, the houses which stray dogs, cats and mice are in, the houses that the Israeli forces destroyed. What's happening is a shame. She said the Israeli army continues to maintain checkpoints around the camp, citing security concerns and the presence of militants attempting to regroup. Officials have not provided a timeline for when residents will be permitted to return. Satellite images taken in recent weeks show visible damage within parts of the camp, collapsed roofs, shattered walls and scattered debris marking the remnants of former homes. UN field officers have confirmed that sections of Nur Shams remain off-limits due to unexploded ordnance and ongoing military restrictions. The Israeli Defense Forces have described their actions as part of what they call counter-terrorism operations. They maintain that the Nur Shams camp contained weapons caches and underground tunnels used for storing explosives and planning attacks. Palestinian civil defense teams dispute this characterization, stating that much of the area affected included civilian housing. Humanitarian agencies, including the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, continue to provide limited assistance to displaced families. Food supplies, water tanks and medical aid are being distributed to nearby towns, though access remains difficult due to frequent military closures. An RWA's regional director has previously warned that long-term displacement could lead to a deepening humanitarian crisis in the northern West Bank. The Nur Shams operation was part of a broader Israeli campaign that began in Jenin in early 2025. The campaign followed a series of clashes between Israeli forces and armed groups that had left several soldiers and militants dead. Israeli airstrikes and ground incursions intensified, leading to widespread destruction across multiple camps. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have called for independent investigations into the extent of civilian harm caused by the operations. They have highlighted what they describe as collective punishment practices, noting that many residents forced to evacuate had no involvement in militant activity. In public statements, Israeli officials have dismissed these accusations, asserting that all operations were conducted in accordance with international law and focused solely on neutralizing terrorist infrastructure. Palestinian officials, meanwhile, have accused Israel of using security justifications to permanently alter the demographic composition of the West Bank. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has described the Nur Shams blockade as a systematic policy of forced displacement. Efforts to mediate the situation have so far produced limited results. The Palestinian Authority has appealed to international mediators, including the European Union and Egypt, to pressure Israel into allowing residents to return. But Israeli officials insist that re-entry will only be permitted once all security conditions are met. In Tulkarem, local councils have set up temporary shelters for hundreds of families who once lived in Nur Shams. Many are crowded into makeshift accommodations, schools and community centres. Aid workers describe conditions as precarious, with limited sanitation, rising unemployment and growing frustration among displaced families. The protests at Nur Shams this week reflect mounting pressure on Palestinian leadership to act. Demonstrators have accused local officials of inaction and silence. Chants during the rally called on the Palestinian Authority to demand accountability and international intervention. Videos circulating on social media show Israeli soldiers positioned behind concrete barriers, preventing groups from entering the camp. Occasional scuffles broke out, but the protest remained largely peaceful. In Jerusalem, Israeli security officials have declined to provide detailed comment on the specific conditions for Nur Shams residents to return, saying only that the area remains under ongoing security evaluation. Analysts note that the situation mirrors patterns seen in previous military operations in the West Bank, temporary evacuations that over time become semi-permanent due to delays in reconstruction and continuing security restrictions. For the displaced families, the wait has stretched from weeks to months. Some have attempted to return on their own, only to be turned back by the army. Others say their homes are too damaged to be reoccupied, even if entry were allowed. According to humanitarian monitors, rebuilding efforts face numerous challenges. Construction materials require Israeli permits, which are rarely granted for refugee camps. Local contractors estimate that full reconstruction could take years, even under stable conditions. The Nur Shams camp, established in 1952 to house Palestinians displaced from the 1948 Arab-Israeli war, has long been one of the most densely populated areas in the northern West Bank. Before the latest operation, its population exceeded 13,000. The camp's narrow alleys and concrete blocks have seen repeated confrontations between Israeli forces and armed factions over the years. Residents say this latest episode has been among the most destructive. UNRWA staff who surveyed the area in April documented extensive damage to public infrastructure, including schools, water pipelines and electrical grids. The Palestinian Red Crescent reports that its teams have faced repeated difficulties reaching the camp due to restrictions at military checkpoints. Medical personnel have been forced to reroute ambulances through secondary roads, lengthening response times. International diplomatic efforts to ease tensions in the West Bank have been overshadowed by the ongoing conflict in Gaza, where ceasefire violations and humanitarian crises continue to dominate global attention. Officials in Ramallah warn that the situation in the northern West Bank risks becoming a forgotten displacement for those still waiting. The return to Nur Shams represents not only a logistical issue, but a matter of dignity and belonging. The residents' chants echoing through the blocked entrance carried a clear message: they want to go home. No official timeline has been announced for the reopening of the camp. Israeli military officials continue to cite ongoing investigations into militant activity, while humanitarian agencies press for immediate humanitarian access. In the absence of a breakthrough, protests like today's are expected to continue. Local organisers say they will maintain pressure on both Palestinian and Israeli authorities until a clear decision is made. As dusk falls over Tulkarem, the displaced residents disperse from the camp's entrance, watched closely by soldiers standing along the perimeter wall. The banners and chants fade, but the calls for return remain unresolved. The Nur Shams residents continue to wait 10 months after their evacuation for the right to go home.